I was staring at $100 of wasted orange blossom honey, and I realized I had made a massive mistake. My kitchen smelled like floral sweetness and failure. My hands were so sticky I could barely pick up the fermenter to dump it. Mead burns through your cash faster than almost any other hobby. It's not because the process is hard, it's because you're starting with honey, and honey is expensive. If your first steps are sloppy, you aren't just failing a recipe, you're throwing away money. Stay with me. In the middle of this, I'm going to give you a tasting shortcut that makes mead click for first-timers. I'll also clear up one mead fact you've probably heard that sounds perfect, but it's actually a lie. Mead is not beer, it's not wine, and it's not cider. It's its own category built on honey. That's exactly why mistakes cost real money. The mission is simple. Give the yeast the best possible start. Manage the batch so flavor stays clean. Nobody wants to take a sip and ask why it tastes hot, flat, or just off. It should have been incredible, but now we hit the step most people rush. Your must needs to be mixed like you mean it. If you use a bucket or a carboy, you cannot just drop honey in and walk away. Follow the no hot spots rule. You want honey completely dissolved. Yeast does not do well with hot spots. If a thick layer of honey settles at the bottom, the yeast that runs into it first gets blasted by an extreme sugar zone. That's a rough way to start. Fermentation might still kick off, but it's not the clean, steady beginning you're trying to build. You want a uniform must. Sweetness should be consistent everywhere. The yeast needs to see the same environment no matter where it is in the fermenter. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps me keep sharing these lessons with our community. If you want one number that tells you what kind of mead you are really making, it is gravity. Think of gravity as dissolved sugar measured by density. Pure water reads 1.000. As you dissolve more sugar, that number climbs. This single reading steers the whole batch. It tells you how strong your mead can become. As you dissolve more sugar, that number climbs. This single reading steers the whole batch. It tells you how strong your mead can become and how hard the yeast has to work, and which problems you're most likely to run into. If you're chasing a stronger mead, the starting gravity can push well past 1100. After that, the final alcohol is tied to where the fermentation stops. Gravity is not a random detail. It's your steering wheel. Now here's a history twist that keeps us honest. Mead is often talked about as one of the oldest fermented drinks humans have made. Saying it's the oldest in the world is tough to back up. But we do see honey-based drinks show up in all kinds of places. In Ethiopia, there's a traditional drink called tej. In Central America, people have been making a version called balshe for hundreds of years. They mix honey with pieces of tree bark and let it ferment. It is a different part of the world, but the core idea is the same. Honey can become the backbone of alcohol when conditions line up. This leads to a question that clears up a lot of confusion. Why honey can sit on a shelf for years, but your must cannot? Honey has a built-in superpower. Fresh nectar starts out watery. If it stayed watery, it'd be much more likely to ferment. Bees solve that by pulling the water content down until it becomes stable. Properly ripened honey kept dry is basically built to resist fermentation. But the second you add water and turn it into must, you flip the switch. You can take something stable and make it fermentable. The quality of your honey matters more than most people assume. A lot of folks treat honey like it's all the same. They think anything on the store shelf is automatically pure and interchangeable. That's a risky assumption. Honey is one of those foods that gets faked sometimes by adding cheap sugar syrups. I look for reputable producers and traceability because whatever is in that honey becomes the backbone of your mead. You usually cannot fix it just by tasting a spoonful. It does not mean you need to freak out. It means you should care where it comes from. Honey is not only sweetness, honey is flavor. The floral source matters. After fermentation, it's just not honey anymore. Different honeys lead to very different aromas and flavors. A wildflower honey can land you in a completely different place than a distinctive varietal honey. That happens even if you use the same yeast and follow the same steps. That's a big part of what makes mead fun. You're not simply choosing a sugar source. You're choosing a signature. Now we're at that part that makes or breaks the batch. Yeast. Dry yeast comes with a massive population of cells, but those cells still need a careful wake-up call. Rehydration is about hitting the right temperature range so the yeast can come back to life without getting shocked. Think of it like a person in a warm bed. If you throw them into a frozen lake, they go into shock. This is the step that gets skipped all the time, and it damages yeast quickly. Check the heat gap between your yeast slurry and your must. You want that gap at least 18 degrees Fahrenheit or less, which is about 10 degrees Celsius. If the difference is bigger than that, you do not pitch yet. Call it the 10-degree rule. You tamper it down in stages by adding small amount of must into the slurry, let it sit briefly, and then measure it again. You keep repeating that cycle until you are within the safe 18-degree window. If your must is at 68 degrees Fahrenheit and your slurry is at 104 degrees Fahrenheit, that's a 36-degree gap. That's exactly the kind of jump you have to step down gradually. Once the temperatures are close enough, you inoculate. For most home mead makers, that's as simple as pouring the slurry into the fermenter and mixing it in well. If you're filling a larger vessel, put the slurry at the bottom right at the start of filling. That way your yeast gets a head start immediately. Yeast does not just want water, it needs support. Honey is well known for being low in certain nutrients that yeast needs for a smooth, clean fermentation. A lot of mead makers use a nutrient plan to avoid the classic headaches: slow starts, stressed yeast, harsh alcohol character, and off aromas. This is not about tossing in junk. It's about giving biology what it needs so it does not fight you the whole way. If you want the simplest way to understand fermentation, it is this. Yeast eats sugar, makes alcohol and carbon dioxide. That is the engine. Your job is to keep that engine running smoothly. Mead making is a craft and science at the same time. You track gravity to see what's actually changing. You watch temperature because yeast behavior shifts with heat. And you keep an eye on things like pH. Fermentation survives or fails inside chemistry. This is where a pattern shows up in almost every stalled story. Gravity is not just a starting number or an ending number. It's also the progress report. As fermentation moves forward, gravity drops because sugar is being converted. If the reading drops early or something is off, maybe it's the temperature, the nutrients, or the yeast health. Maybe the must is just too concentrated. The hydrometer is not giving an opinion, it's reporting what is happening. But even if you run a clean fermentation, you're not automatically finished. Mead often goes from good to wow because of time. And sometimes wood aging does not hold the drink in place. It changes it. And as time passes, flavors soften and sharpen edges round out, and the whole profile feels more connected. When wood enters the picture, it adds its own layer of transformation. When oak is tossed in, heat breaks down parts of the wood and creates compounds that affect aroma. That is how you get vanilla-like character without ever adding a vanilla bean. Oak can also bring out coconut-like notes through oak lactones. It can add spice-like tones through other compounds that come from the wood. That's not marketing talk. That is what toasted wood does. Imagine a raspberry fruit mead resting with that kind of oak influence. You're not only tasting fruit and honey, you're also tasting what aging does to aroma, color, and texture. The smartest way to taste is to look first, smell second, and sip third. Ask yourself what shifted as the drink warmed up. Mead can literally change in the glass. Do not taste one mead and decide you have cracked the whole category. That's like trying one light beer and thinking you understand heavy stouts. Mead has range. Some meads drink bright and clean, almost like white wine. Some feel bigger, richer, and more layered. Some will shock you with how far they land from what you expected fermented honey to taste like. Now we cash in on the promise from the beginning, the tasting shortcut that makes mead make sense fast. Don't start with a single glass. Start with contrast. Put together a small flight and taste different styles side by side, so your brain can help map the spectrum. Taste a dry mead next to a sweet one. Put a traditional mead next to a fruited one. Try a young mead next to something that shows some aging influence. That comparison is the cheat code. Instead of thinking, do I like mead? You switch to a much better question. Which type of mead do I like? And that's the moment the category opens up. And now for that one fact people love to repeat that isn't true. You might hear that the word amazing comes from an old mead drinking bowl called a mazer. Like the word means, being as happy as someone drunk on mead. Mazers are the real historical bowls, yes, but that's not where the word actually comes from. The word traces back to the idea of being put into a maze. It means you're stunned or bewildered. Still, I get why people want a story to be real. When mead is made well, it really can feel like you just found a drink you didn't even know was out there. If you never had a mead, don't let one bottle make the decision for you. Mix your must thoroughly. Keep an eye on gravity. Treat yeast like it actually matters. If you want more real mead-making breakdowns like this, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps me keep sharing these lessons with our community. And go watch the next video over here. Because once you understand gravity, yeast health, and aging, you're never going to look at honey the same way again. Happy mead making.